Good day, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Military and Foreign Affairs Network. I am your host, the voice of reason. Today, we are continuing our coverage of the ongoing crisis between Ukraine and Russia. So, what are the news reports coming out of the region as we speak? So, first and foremost, it would appear that it's not that it appeared. Putin actually spoke in reference to the in writing response that he received from the United States and NATO regarding his demands for Ukraine never to be allowed to be part of NATO and also Georgia. And the moving back of forces prior to the 1997 entry of such countries such as Romania, Poland, and the Baltics, and obviously that written response was in the negative, that none of those requests were going to be honored by NATO, and he has since responded, basically saying such that none of those requests or those demands that Russia has made would be honored. So again, just a verification on the part of the Kremlin and Vladimir Putin that he has acknowledged NATO's written response. And we're continuing to see the military buildup continuing as well. So I was going to talk a little bit about some new troop movements by the Russian Federation towards Ukraine and areas within the environs of Ukraine, and then also what Ukraine is doing in anticipation for a possible attack by the Russian Federation. So first, we'll start with the Ukrainians. Obviously, we do know that the buildup of those territorial brigades continues. There is information coming out of the region that would indicate that they are receiving surplus volunteers, meaning there are certain requirements, certain metrics for personnel they're recruiting. Let's say they're recruiting a battalion-size formation of 600 personnel, so they have 600 slots for said battalion. They are receiving an excess of volunteers, meaning that they are filling out those battalions and they're having volunteers left over that they cannot accept at this point. So they're receiving, again, a surplus of volunteers per Ukrainian news outlets. We also hear that in addition, now this could be in addition or this could be the same, again, not quite sure yet, but we believe at this point this is an addition to those territorial brigades that are being formed, the 25 territorial brigades. But it looks like Ukraine looks to expand its military by 100,000 active duty personnel. So obviously that would probably, for the most part, go into two categories. It would go into filling out those naval infantry brigades that they're creating. I believe there's roughly 5 of them that they're looking at creating. I think they have 2 right now that have been filled out. And then obviously they're looking at expanding their ground forces from roughly 160,000 personnel with the addition of those 100,000. So the standing Ukrainian army in a period of about 3 years, if it goes to plan, could number a 250,000 men just in the standing ground forces for the most part, probably 220, 230, and then the rest would go to the other services and the National Guard. But it sounds like the majority of those are going to go towards the Army, where up to 20 additional brigades could be formed. Now, that seems like a lot of number in terms of active brigades. That's basically doubling the size of the maneuver brigade force that Ukraine has now, and probably more than doubling it actually. But a sizable increase in the defense spending for Ukraine and the number of personnel that it's going to have in its armed forces. So the actual ground force component of Ukraine could be fairly close to the active duty ground force component of the Russian Federation as of now, what it stands at as of now. But we continue to see that also the deployment of Russian forces. There was 2 known reports coming out that we're hearing that another helicopter regiment is being deployed to the Crimea. I believe it's this one right here, the 55th Separate Helicopter Regiment, which includes Mi-28Ns. Again, these are anti-armor attack helicopters, anti-armor, anti-anything really. Mi-35 attack helicopters, and then Ka-52 recon and attack helicopters. I do know that this unit here, the 55th, actually transferred its Ka-52s to the Crimea, to this unit here, the 39th Helicopter Regiment. And then it received a new batch, the 55th received a new batch of Ka-52s, which are now also being deployed to the Crimea. So this entire unit is now reportedly being deployed. And again, you have attack helicopter assets, reconnaissance assets, and transport assets as well. So another significant component of the Russian military moving towards Crimea in preparation for a possible attack. Another verification of a Eastern District military unit, and that would be the 14th Spetsnaz Brigade, and that's located right here. And again, this is thousands and thousands of miles located to the east with 4 Special Forces detachments. It's unknown exactly how many of these detachments are being deployed towards the Ukrainian theater. It sounds like that many of these units are actually going into Belarus. So again, up to 4 if we take the entire 14th Spetsnaz Brigade that is being deployed. Most likely, the deployment of these forces would be via aircraft and not need the use of the railway system to move these forces to Belarus. So in all probability, they're being flown in. Right now, the force estimates of Russian forces in Belarus, we have heard numbers anywhere from 5 to 8,000 personnel currently, with a possible goal by around February 10th, in just 10 days, of around 30,000 Russian troops. So they're about a third of the way there, maybe a little bit less. But again, it does look like they're putting a significant force construct in Belarus. Again, looking to quite possibly launch attacks down possibly the west side of the Dnieper River, and then obviously heavy forces over in this area around the tri-border area that would come down along the east of the Dnieper River as well. So again, just additional forces that are reportedly being moved, and it again, it really runs the gambit, and just in terms of just how many forces by the Russians are again moving towards the border with Ukraine. Again, we at MFAN just, again, we could call it either way. On one hand, it does look like something is going to happen, and on the other hand, and we had this feeling that it could just be too messy, and that's probably why it's not going to happen. But the Ukrainians continue to quietly build its forces and prepare for operations. The Ukrainians are definitely not telegraphing what they're doing. They're, for the most part, being much, much more covert in what they are doing, as opposed to the Russians being a little more overt in the deployment of some of these forces. It's very difficult to be covert if you are the Russians, considering the reported amount of forces that are being moved by the Russians to the border with Ukraine. So a lot of remote sensing assets from a variety of nations are really watching this, predominantly from the United States, and obviously human intelligence as well, and cyber intelligence, and signals intelligence as well, listening to what the Russians are saying and doing. Again, the Ukrainians, on the other hand, being much more covert. We anticipate they are doing things, and they are moving forces, but again, they don't want to telegraph where those forces are being deployed, because the Russians would have the ability to quickly attack those forces with air assets and or ground-to-ground strike assets, such as Iskander's and long-range rocket fire as well. So the Ukrainians want to be as vigilant as possible in terms of hiding those force moves, whereas the Russians, maybe not so much. They probably don't fear a Ukrainian strike on these forces massing in Russia. And that's not to say that the Ukrainians can't. They do have a limited capacity with ballistic missiles, some cruise missiles itself, to conduct strikes in and around the theater of operation. Again, they could probably actually at some point, if Kiev is hit, there's probably the ability that has been developed to even launch something towards Moscow. Now, would that happen? Again, very hard to say, but the Ukrainians definitely have the capability to manufacture and deploy assets that could target deep into the Russian Federation or Belarus, and definitely hit targets deep into the Crimea as well, if they chose to do so. But obviously that could risk an escalation. But then again, if Kiev is being attacked, then what else do they have to lose? And that's probably going into Putin's calculus as well. The understanding that the Ukrainians could strike back, and this could be, again, a long, very drawn out, bloody affair that could risk the political apparatus for Putin and his inner circle that runs the country at this point. But again, we at MFAN 50-50 on if anything's going to happen. I know that's a fairly weak argument or weak side to take in terms of predicting what is going to happen, but again, it's very, very hard to predict what is going to happen in regards to this activity. Again, a lot of forces being moved by the Russians, and this will probably go down in history in terms of the actual movement of forces by the Russians if nothing occurs. That this was the largest by percentage of total armed forces moved in the history of probably the Russian and or Soviet times, outside of the movement of forces that were involved during World War II, and maybe to some extent some of the deployments that occurred for the Afghan War, and some of the deployments that happened in Eastern Europe as well during some of the more tumultuous periods. But again, we're going to continue to monitor the situation and, of course, report with new content for your consumption. Have a good day, everybody.